Leaders are not judged by the number of followers, but the number of leaders they create. A quote from Tom Peters that really sums up today's episode. Gavin Dimmock, CRO at Papirfly, has spent the last 28 years in the industry working for companies such as Oracle, Sitecore, and Terminus. He is not only an incredible leader, but also passionate about making the next generation and passing his learnings onto those who want to step up. If you're interested in leadership or are currently a leader that's wanting to make a difference to the industry, then this episode is for you. We cover what makes a great leader, managing millennials and Gen Z, mentorship, and making an impact to the next generation of leaders by helping them break the glass ceiling. Can't wait to get into today's episode. Let me know what you think in the comments below. So today I'm really looking forward to talking to you, as I mentioned, about creating the next generation of sales leaders. I know that that's something that you are very passionate about and you've had a great career throughout your experience. So I'd love to start with the first question, which is, why do you enjoy being a leader?
Well, there's many aspects to it. And I think, kind of as every year goes past, there's another layer to kind of get enjoyment from. I think the personal pieces and to be a good or great sales leader, you've got to have an interest in how do you inspire and motivate individuals to perform at their very best and be their authentic selves. And I think unlocking that sometimes in individuals as a leader is great. To see people blossom and bloom through their careers and achieve their own goals, pass on experiences that you've got. I think all of those facets to take sometimes kind of that rough diamond and just see people progress their careers to probably achieve far greater things that I've ever achieved in my career, and to be part of their journey or their story is a source of great pride first and foremost, but also if you can help impart some of those skills or knowledge or experiences that you've had along the way, I think we all kind of owe it to ourselves to try and do that to that next gen of leaders. Yeah,
definitely. I think you have that sense of pride when you watch people that you've nurtured and you'd help mentor and grow throughout their careers. When they succeed great things, you're like, my work here is done. But I'm interested to know, what is that driver for you? Like, why are you, because there are people out there that maybe just want to be an individual contributor and they're not interested in leadership and not in a selfish aspect, but they are really interested in themselves and their own progression and the money that they can bring, and leadership famously, like, you take a bit of a cut in terms of the commission. So what is that driver for you, Gavin, that you really thrive off that, like, satisfaction of watching other people grow?
It's definitely not the money aspect.
Yeah.
Because what you've said, and I'm sure for a lot of people, if they move into their first or maybe even their second line management role, will probably realise that a great rep will probably earn more than a good manager. And, don't do it just because of the money. Do it because I think you can bring people together. You can get people inspired and motivated around a common cause. You can set clear North Stars and have a team follow that, whether you lead from the front or whether you lead from the back, and kind of that's largely situational. From my own perspective, I was very fortunate. I had a pretty successful career as a rep. And that gave me so much satisfaction. But at the end of the day, it just became about another deal or another transaction or another commission check. And don't worry, I spent all of that money. That was fine. But there's got to be something more to it. And I think that's where people who may feel in a similar situation should really explore whether they've got the right personality and characteristics and self-propulsion and motivation to actually explore what becoming a leader and a manager of people is going to involve, because it's not all roses. It's not all everything that you may see on LinkedIn. There's some tough times, and you've also got to have that level of resilience to help people through that as well.
Yeah. Do you have a success story of someone that you look back in your career and you're like, wow, like, I've seen them go from SDR to, I'm sure you've got many, but is there one that really stands out that you feel particularly proud of that you don't mind sharing?
I probably wouldn't want to mention their name for sake of perhaps embarrassing them as individuals. My wife used a phrase once, and I used it on a kind of previous podcast of, great leaders are not measured by the amount of followers that they've got, but the amount of leaders they create. And I'm by no means suggesting I'm a great leader, but I do believe I can pinpoint back through my career people who have worked for me who either directly in my organisation or I've worked with in a mentoring capacity that have gone on to achieve far greater things. So maybe CROs of NASDAQ listed companies, or have gone through multiple IPOs or private equity exits in very senior sales roles. That, that's because of their effort and their talent. My role in that is that for the period of time, that maybe short period of time that they worked for me or we worked together, that I hope I was just able to add a little bit more richness to their skill set at that time, and they've clearly used that to go on to achieve greater things. So,
you're almost like a parent, aren't you, as a leader? Like helping them go off into the big bad world.
I think you take almost a parental responsibility, if I can extend on your analogy. There is a parental responsibility that during the charge that people work together, people need to leave that environment in a far better situation than when they arrived. And that is about how do you help them acquire new skills? How do you give them different experiences? How can you help them achieve greater things than they otherwise thought maybe were possible? But you do have that responsibility, and it's difficult to do it for all of the people all of the time. There will always be people who maybe didn't get enough attention, or who maybe left the organisation for various reasons. But I think if you can do it for most people most of the times, you're probably going to end up in a pretty good position.
Yeah. And speaking of those skills, when you are looking at people in your team, or maybe you might be mentoring, which I know we want to touch on in a minute, but what are those key skills that you really look for when trying to develop those next generation of leaders?
Yeah. Look, it's about team, not about self. You've done self as an individual contributor, and are people mature enough to make that shift? And mature is not an age thing, mature is a mindset thing. You need to consistently kind of flex that curiosity muscle, and your curiosity just becomes about different things. Because you've got to interrelate to different people. Everybody needs to be interrelated to differently to find out and be curious about the things that are going to flick their switch and get them energized and motivated. Sometimes you need to lift people up. Sometimes you need to bring people back down to earth. And so I think there are various characteristics. You clearly need to be able to set pace and set energy, and you need to be able to lead by example. And sometimes you need to trim rough edges off of people. Geez, I mean, people are still trying to trim rough edges off of me, right? But I'm probably too long in the tooth to change. But I think, if you can help mold and shape people, not in your image, and I think that's a mistake a lot of people make early career in leadership, is to try and mold people into their image. And it's not. It's to try and lift them in the best version of themselves. To go and do their thing, because everybody's different, right? Yeah.
And you touched on curiosity. I know that you're really passionate about your background, and I'm sure you'll get onto this, but you were really known for your hard work. You had a crazy long commute, didn't you, for your first job that you used to do? How long was that?
As in an earlier version, I guess, of life as an SDR, it was about an hour and a half commute up and down the M1 and M6 and M42. Just to get to work, right? And so kind of an hour and a half, 2 hour drive.
And we live in this world where we're if we don't live within a 30-40 minute commute, I'm being remote and I do not want to go in. And I guess there is this sense of impatience, because we do have everything at our fingertips. So I know that you are really passionate about instilling hard work in people, but also that curiosity element. And I want to touch on that for a bit, is how do you empower your reps to be curious, not just within the deal cycle?
Yeah, and outside of the deal cycle, it's inside and outside of the deal cycle. So let me try and kind of explain. We talk about curiosity, and everybody talks about curiosity, right? So kind of join the queue. But we talk about being curious about who's your champion. Are you curious about your EB? What about your coach? What about these stakeholders? And of course, we've got to do all of that. There's an element here that should really be at the foreground, which is about your customer or your prospect. And it's about being curious on them and how do they make money as a company. I would encourage everybody all of the while to go meet your customer at their office. You will learn so much more. As soon as you walk into reception, you get an understanding of the furniture. Is the carpet a bit threadbare? Is it a very opulent office? I had a guy in one of my teams in a couple of organisations ago, and we managed to convince him to go on this commute. It was like a 4-hour train journey, I think, to Blackpool.
Wow.
And it was for a 10 a.m. meeting or something, and he had to get up early. And this customer, they were making something in the region of like polymer widgets. I don't know what that widget did.
Yeah.
And we said, go see them. And it was like for a 45-minute meeting for an 8-hour commute there and back. And we were like, fine, it's your day's job.
Yeah.
And he had a very successful meeting, and he phoned me from the taxi afterwards and said, yeah, great meeting, blah, 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 deal's progressing. I said, where are you? And he said, well, I'm in the taxi on the way back. Meeting's just finished.
Yeah.
I'm like, did you ask for a tour of the factory? No.
Oh, no.
Have you ever seen however people make polymer widgets? No. Are you curious? Yeah, but I've got to get back
Oh, my gosh.
And that's fine, but it's a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
And I've been very fortunate through my career, from the sublime to the ridiculous, the sublime being to visit Buckingham Palace on a number of occasions.
Oh, I had to show off.
Not for any MBE. To sell
How many awards do you have, Gavin?
to sell it, and the answer to that is pretty round number. To sell them the first ever Ethernet that went into Buckingham Palace. And it really, because as a young rep, and it goes, geez, that was interesting. I get to tell a story about visiting Buckingham Palace. But whether it's Buckingham Palace or whether it's working in the John Lewis warehouse, packing boxes and picking boxes, and figuring out that the most important machine there is the one that prints labels. Because if you can't stick a label on a parcel, the whole operation stops.
Yeah.
Right? And it's stuff like that. And it's helping people in Tesco's, and I can't remember what store we're at, packing. You know those people at the end of the checkout, they say, can I help you pack? And go and do that. So if you can put yourself closer to your customer and understand what their business is really about, then your ability to gain empathy with them, to be their side of the table, and really start to think about how your solution's going to fix some of those real problems, that printer in the warehouse is so much greater. But whether it's that or whether it's going to the Aston Martin factory or the McLaren factory, which is kind of wow.
Yeah.
You know, amazing. I would encourage everybody, doesn't matter what your customer does, go see them in their place of work. Go see them in their place of business. A little bit more difficult now, but ask.
It's interesting because there's this talk around it's not about sales enablement now, it's more around buyer enablement and really understanding and getting in the shoes of the buyer when you are going through a demo and through the sales process. But this is almost like customer enablement, and you're like, I wonder if that could really help you with your deal process, is like going to your buyer that you're trying to pitch to and saying, actually, do you know what? I've really understood who your customer is, and I've been to, not that you'll be able to maybe get into Buckingham Palace and like understand that before you've won the deal, but if you are like maybe working with somebody that is working with Tesco's or whatever, it's like really understanding their customer so that you can be a more educating seller to the buyer. Because as a salesperson, I think when there's so much noise at the moment and it is really tricky to land those deals, you do need to offer some insight to your buyer. So if you've got that perspective from the customer, I think that's a great opportunity.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, the statistics are getting even more and more scary, and it's kind of like 85% of people don't want to interact with you as a seller, as a salesperson. They might want to interact with you. And in fact, I had a situation this very week with the account team for our largest customer globally of, do we have an opportunity to go and sit down? And we do, for those of you who don't know what Papirfly do, we work with organizations about how do they amplify and promote their brands by employer brand or corporate branding. Could we maybe go sit with the customer just for a day and do a day in the life of? And it's a very powerful thing. Sitting with the creative team, sitting with the marketing team, sitting with the branding team, not just how do they use our tool, but that's important because maybe we can help them with efficiencies. Maybe we can spot opportunity for upsell or cross-sell.
Yeah.
But just living the life of our customer and understanding their real day-to-day challenges. And again, day in the life. do you really think about yourselves and how your solution is helping somebody in a day in their life? And the best way to do that is not over a video call, and is definitely not over email or Slack. It's about sitting with them. If you can, you will also get greater empathy. And when it comes down to that evaluation, we've got vendor A and vendor B. They both scored pretty much the same on the spreadsheet. The pricing's pretty much the same. How are you going to make a selection? I had an ex-colleague of mine who was in a very similar situation before, and he said the customer made a decision on who do we want to invite to our Christmas party?
Oh, really?
And if you're the individual who made the effort, maybe you're going to be the person who gets the deal and gets invited to their Christmas party. So are you ever going to see that on an account plan? I don't know. Give it a try. Put it on there. Is that what good looks like?
Yeah, that's really fascinating. And I think all of what we're talking about right now is coaching reps to be successful. And part of going back to the point of this episode of like creating that next generation of leaders. And I think mentorship and coaching is so, so important. And having those people that you can, I'm sure you mentor a lot of people in your career, but having those people that you can bounce ideas off that are outside of your organization. So I'd love to get into how can we make sure that as maybe people listening to this that want to step up into leadership, how can you find that perfect mentor that's for you? Because there are people out there that are maybe big names on LinkedIn or like the linkfluencers, as we say, and they probably get inundated with requests, and I'm sure you are going to after this episode as well. But sometimes they're not right for you, and actually do they have the skills that can help you be a more well-rounded rep? So how would you advise that?
And I think that's probably a great place to start. If somebody's after a mentor is, question one is, are you sure what you want to be mentored in and what the outcome you want to achieve is? And sometimes that's a really difficult question to answer. And sometimes you almost need like a pre-mentor to help you understand some of those.
Yeah.
But do try and understand the 3 to 5 things that you think you need to do. Some common things are, how can I build my network? In a social media world, it's a lot easier than it used to be. People talk about how can I build my brand, my individual brand. Probably the most common one I've seen over the years is, how do I help manage my manager?
Yeah.
It's how do I manage up? Not my customer, how do I manage up? It's a very tricky one and very, very common. And then they go find the most popular person in the office or the most popular person on LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever it is that you think is going to help you. That could be fine. The thing that you need to ask yourselves when seeking a mentor is, what do I need? And is the person I'm going to ask 2 things. One, have they got the skill set that can help me address the things that I need mentoring in? And secondly, is there going to be that natural level of chemistry and trust in a relationship? Because without that, we're not really going to reveal all of the things about ourselves. And sometimes it can feel, quite difficult being that open to a stranger of the things that you need most to help your career. And sometimes it spills over into personal life. And there's a very fine line between the two as well.
Yeah.
So find someone you think you can trust, that you've got chemistry with, but can directly help you with those 3 to 5 things. I would then suggest run that mentoring program for maybe 6 to 9 months, tops, no more.
How come? I'm sure you're going to answer.
So, after that period of time, you've probably either achieved or you haven't achieved the outcomes that you want.
Yeah.
And if you haven't, either the relationship has got stale, either you are not gaining the experience that you need from the individual, and that's fine. But after 6 to 9 months, you should be making some inroads into some measurable results.
Yeah.
I would recommend personally that you meet with somebody maybe every 4 to 6 weeks, somewhere between an hour and 2 hours per session. That sounds like a big ask. But by the time you've gone through kind of the preamble, how are you? Did you watch this last night? What do you think about the weather? How's your day job? How's the, children,
Going
whatever.
on holiday, like the chat that we had.
Right. You're 30 minutes in.
Yeah.
And then you go, okay, well, you then talk about what's top of mind.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you have this really fuzzy mind of maybe you've just lost a deal. Maybe you've just had a bit of a harsh words with your boss or a co-worker, and you've got to get rid of that. You've got to empty all of that as well, and you need somebody to listen. And then we can get on to the strategic things that you want. So that's what I would suggest that you do, and you try and keep on track as best as you can.
It's like therapy, isn't it? You've got to like unpack it all so that you can actually get to the bit that you need help with.
And therapy starts with that level of self-awareness, but it's precisely like therapy.
Yeah. And so what questions would you, as a person going to a mentor, you can say all of those points that you mentioned of like how to look for a good mentor. It's very difficult though to really understand just from looking on someone's profile on social media or maybe getting a referral, but like to really understand, like, are they going to be able to deliver on those areas that I've set for myself? They've done all their prep work, they know where they need those areas of development. Would you say like just reaching out to them on LinkedIn and being like, hey, are you able to help me with XYZ? Or would you just start with a conversation? Like, what are those kind of teasing questions that would get that out?
And it does start with that, again, back to curiosity. It does come back to that curiosity of, by all means, approach people on LinkedIn. My experience is most people are here to help. Most people have a network, not just for self-promotion, but because they genuinely wish to help. It then becomes a question of how much time have people got. And I wouldn't just focus on one individual. It may be to get the best out of you as a mentee, you need to be challenged in a certain way. So what makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable, go find one of those people. And that could be somebody from a different generation, from an age perspective. It could be someone from a different gender, because it's going to force a different type of conversation. It could be somebody from a different background. There are a number of things that could be forcing functions. And if everybody comes back and says, yeah, sure, let's have an initial chat, it's almost like an interview. And see if that chemistry's there. Because if the chemistry is not there, that level of trust isn't going to be there. And if that level of trust isn't going to be there, that level of exposure to the things that you really need assistance with. It doesn't always have to be deep and meaningful. It could be at a slightly different level. I progress my sales cycle through these and I struggle to close, but I can't have that conversation with my manager. That's fine. Find someone who's great at closing.
And to your point, like, message multiple people. You could have somebody that really helps you with like the sales aspect of your job, and then you could have another mentor that helps you with like the emotional side of the job. So you can have people for different parts of where you feel like you need development, I guess.
You can, and as you go through, and I would encourage everybody to have a mentor and probably have maybe one or maybe two every 18 months. And it's fine to change them. Don't take on multiple at once, because you'll confuse messages, and it's hard work.
You're pretty senior now. Do you still have a mentor, or do you just mentor?
A great question. Shame on me. I don't have a mentor. I have people I can, in my network, I might be able to discuss challenges of the day. I've had a number of mentors through my career, and they were all almost exclusively around career building in a large corporation, such as, I did 20 years in Oracle. And I think it is essential that you have a mentor in those organizations. It's very actively encouraged to help build and understand where you could best serve the company and where the company can best serve you to get the best out of you. I think that's essential. I think it's a little bit more difficult in smaller organizations, which is why there are programs that are cross-company mentoring programs. You don't just have to sit in your swim lane, either from your network on LinkedIn or from your network within your organization. I've worked in a number of cross-company and cross-functional networking groups, and they're quite often the most fun. Also the most challenging, but actually, regardless whether you're in software sales or you're in financial services or you're in manufacturing, a lot of the challenges at a leadership level are all very similar. So there's a lot more commonality than you would expect.
But maybe you should go get one mentor now. Now I've got your cogs ticking. You're like, I'm going to go out and I'm going to find a mentor. I think, no, but it's interesting to hear from perspective of sort of like when you get to the level that you are, like whether you having that one person is actually beneficial for you, or whether it is better to just have, as you've mentioned, like different companies and different people that you just, I guess, reach out to every now and then when you need help, instead of just one, because you probably have so many areas that you might need help with, as your role is very large.
I think everybody needs somebody to talk to professionally, or to talk about their profession. Being in leadership, not using myself as an example here, but the higher you get, the lonelier it becomes. You generally have less people to speak to because you can't reveal everything because you feel you're being judged, certainly internally in an organisation. So it is critical.
I guess your wife is your sounding board, isn't she?
She's a very good sounding board, but also, those people who know you best and normally come back with some great challenges, but great observations as well.
Definitely. So I really want to end off this episode, touch on how we can really make an impact in those next generation of leaders. And it is important. You've got a status, you've got a platform as a leader for you to be able to use that voice and make a difference in the industry. We've chatted about this briefly before. I know you're really passionate about like lifting other women and giving them their platform to be heard and to grow and break that glass ceiling, as you might say. But what are some things that you think leaders can do to really make that impact? And I guess why is it so important to you as well?
Yeah, and there's lots of people will be very passionate about lots of different things. My particular passion at the stage of career I'm at, and certainly over the last few years, is about how can we help accelerate, support and lift female leaders, particularly in a sales environment. It could be technology sales, it may not be technology sales. And I've got involved in a number of programs external to my workplace where you have an opportunity to do that. We've got, in fact, a quick advert, the closing entries for Women in Sales Europe.
Yes.
Which is an amazing, I'll be my 5th year as a judge in different categories this year. And it's just the most incredible program, not just for female leaders, but for an amazing female talent in sales. And it could be whether it's in consumer packaged goods or technology or financial services, huge breadth of people in the sales profession, getting feedback, getting a competitive spirit, eventually, being on stage and maybe collecting an award and being allocated a mentor to help them grow their careers. It may be growing their careers as an individual contributor or as a leader. There are also networks, of which I'm very proud to be part of, that are specifically for females in senior leadership roles, where possibly there's a glass ceiling, and it's probably more prevalent than still continues to get talked about, where they just need an outside voice and somebody to bounce either ideas off or challenges of what might be preventing them progressing their careers. And I've worked with some amazing, continue to work with 2 at the moment, some amazing female leaders from across industry, that there are some unique challenges, I think, to females that as a male leader I probably wouldn't have had visibility into. But actually when you sit down and you listen and understand that there is a difference, and I think as a leader who happens to be male, you can help assist people through some of these challenges. Some of those challenges may be that people need to leave the organisations they're in. Some of them you see them get promoted. And it's not because of what Gavin does, or it's because of the sheer determination and talent. But sometimes people just need kind of a little spin and look at problems through a different lens in the prism, and a little bit of assistance, and somebody to listen and to care, and to assist where they can. And I think that's a huge source of personal satisfaction. I think it's great as a leader within Papirfly and sits very comfortably with the work that we do as an organisation around diversity, equality, inclusion and belonging. So that we have a really strong, across all of our regions, diverse workforce who feel that they can build a career and be supported in building their career in our organisation for the time that they continue to dedicate their work with us.
Yeah, it goes further than just females, as you mentioned, like diversity, inclusion, belonging. It's anything. It's about making everybody feel like they have a place to bring their full selves to work, to be able to have a voice, to be able to speak up and feel comfortable that they're going to be able to be listened to. We have this really unique opportunity with you being sat here right now, and this being recorded. And I would love to ask, as like the wrap-up question for this, is what would you say to other male leaders out there of where we maybe need to step up a little bit and what work we can do now to help make that difference?
I think get involved, right? And it comes back again, sorry to sound like a broken record, with this curiosity.
Yeah.
Whether your particular passion is assisting female leaders, or whether your particular passion is assisting people who are coming out of the armed forces into our industry, or maybe another industry, you will have a skill set to pass on when you analyse yourself. Please don't let your career be defined by the amount of commission you got paid, the amount of stock options you're able to cash in, or how high up the organisation you got. There is more to it than that. And that's fine. But I believe that there is more that people can offer once they've achieved all of those things. And it's not that they're mutually exclusive, to assist others, because it's tough out there. And it's tough for a ton of people. And we sit in a very, very privileged situation, particularly in software sales, in SaaS sales. We're very, very privileged. And I think there is an altruistic element to most people, but sometimes you do need to just kind of gently encourage those, because everybody has a passion point, and it's about finding it and then pushing that further on. And I think that's, if we can all take somebody in our network we know, engage and energize that, just think of all the greatness that's going to come out.
Yeah, and to your point that you made at the beginning of this episode, you do what you do, and I'm sure a lot of people do as well, because you just want to make an impact and make a bit of a difference and feel like you've imparted some of your wisdom and experience onto people. So if we can all help others learn that, and through whatever medium, I think we'll all be doing a service to the industry and really changing the industry for the better. So I've really enjoyed this conversation, Gavin. Thank you so much for coming in. But as we end every episode on Sales Unfiltered, as we want to talk about the highs and the lows and the successes, but also like the failures that people go through and the challenges that you face every day. What is one challenge or failure that you face within your career that's really shaped you to where you are today?
I think when I reflect back of a, pretty much 30-year career in IT sales, I wish I would have slowed down my level of ambition in the kind of formative years of my career. And I think if you rush to try and push constantly to get that next promotion above somebody else, be careful what you wish for. And I think, if you focus on the basics, you do your job well, because we've still got to sell some software in the back end of all of this, right? Then usually people will notice great talent and great latent talent in the right organizations with the right leadership. And I probably missed that element and focused on the wrong bit. And if I was to do it all again, I'd probably do it just a little bit slower and a little bit more thoughtful, without that level of overt determination. But look, it's all turned out okay. It's fine.
You've done pretty well, Gavin. But I think it's a really good point. It's like, actually, just sometimes step back, smell the roses, like look at what you've created and just be really proud of yourself, because people are in sales because you're very determined and competitive. But sometimes that comes at a cost if you're always being so competitive with yourself and you're never actually being happy and proud of what you've achieved so far. So it is important to give yourself a pat on the back. I give you a huge pat on the back. I think you've done incredibly well in your career. I think a lot of people will probably look up to you, and I'm sure that they do. And I've learnt so much from this episode and speaking to you today, and I'm sure everybody at home has as well. So thank you so much for coming on.
It's been all my pleasure. Thank you, Izzy.
Thanks so much for listening. Check out the channel for more episodes like this one, and we'll see you next week.